Welcome to Miracles in the Madness, where faith meets the chaos. I'm your host, Ashton Keever, and together we'll explore stories, biblical truth, and encouragement for women living in the beautiful, messy life God has called them to. Each week, we'll dive into real-life testimonies, practical encouragement, and biblical insights to help you walk faithfully through the everyday madness. Ready to get started? Let's go. So as many of you know, I think I told this story on here before, I became a parent about 1 month before our little world around where I live shut down because of the COVID-19 virus. At that time, I cannot imagine a worse scenario for beginning my parenting journey, because I was personally sitting in this place of longing for more community and more connection and more advice from other Christian mamas who have gone through what I was experiencing. I found a deeper longing for the Lord and interest in gaining a deeper relationship with Him. I had no idea how much community really would matter in my faith journey. Now that we have come on the other side of COVID and I finally have found this very large, well-rounded group of supportive and encouraging women around me, I want to share them with you. And I want to encourage you to find the same community. But I know some of us aren't in a position where we can just go out and meet people. I want to invite you to participate in this community of faith-based, strong women in Christ who are ready and able to encourage you and support you and pray for you. And you can find them on Facebook at the Miracles in the Madness community. I'm going to link it below. I want to invite you to participate, because if there's one thing that I think really came out of COVID that we all learned, is that while virtual friendships and working relationships and things like that they're not always perfect. We learned how to communicate and grow friendships and relationships through online forums and opportunities, so that we could then take what we were learning in those groups and maybe in those workplaces and bring it out into the world. And so that's what I want to do in this community. But more than anything, I want the mamas who join this group to feel like at any moment, if they're struggling with anything, if they need prayer, if they want to ask for advice, or even ask questions about the Bible studying that they're doing, I want you to know you can come and participate. So I hope you'll join us, and just reach out to me if you have any questions. The link is below in the show notes. Welcome back to Miracles in the Madness. I'm Ashton Keever, your host, and today I am talking to a new special friend of mine. Her name is Lori Hancock, and she is technically only the office manager up at High Hill Christian Camp, but I tell you what, I think she's a whole lot more than that, and I think as you hear her story, you'll come to find that her and her husband are doing really big ministry and really big work up there. And I just am excited to have you on here today, Lori. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here.
So what I didn't say in that intro was that Lori is also a mom of 3 boys and probably countless hundreds of other kids that come across the camp grounds. And Lori and her husband have been in ministry for 20 years. And so Lori, tell me, let's just jump right in. Lori's got a pretty big story, so I want to make sure that we give her plenty of time. So we're actually going to do a few episodes here with Lori, because I think each part of her story will touch on different things that we're all kind of going through or have been through, or maybe might go through. And so I want to make sure we give each part of her testimony plenty of
time. And I guess actually before we jump in, Lori, you guys have the Women's Weekend coming up. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Sure. So every year, every spring at High Hill Christian Camp, we do a women's retreat, simply titled Women's Weekend. I know it's so like, wow, that's revolutionary. But it's just a Friday, Saturday thing that we do, an overnight thing at the camp. This year, we actually, as of this recording, only have 10 spots left. So probably it may be a little too late this year, but mark it on your calendars for next year. It's usually either the last weekend of February or the first weekend of March. We would love to have you, invite you to come join us with that. We always focus on issues that are just really relevant to women. Like this year, we're talking about your story, past, present, and future, and what happens when you let God write your story. And kind of the tagline is, when God writes the story, every page has a purpose. So kind of a lot of when Ashton and I were talking about this, that's kind of how I laid out my story. Like she said, with different episodes, we'll kind of maybe focus on the past, the present, and the future, just to kind of give you an idea of where we're going so that hopefully you'll want to listen to all of them, and support Ashton's ministry in that way. But yeah, so we would love to have you join us. If you just go to highhillcamp.org, that you can get there from, if you go to highhillcamp.org, you can find out all the information, also about summer camp, which we'll kind of probably be talking about a little bit as well. We love our ministry up there. We love being able to minister to anybody of every age through the camp ministry setting. Camp ministry is its own unique thing, just being able to be with God in nature. But we do have air conditioning because that's important for people who don't like the outside like me. Which is always funny when I tell people that, because they're like, what do you mean you work at a church camp? I'm like, no, like Ashton said, I am the office manager. That means I'm inside in the air conditioning. Yeah, my hubby's the outdoor guy. And so, yeah, but we love our ministry.
I just want to make sure it's really clear. I'm joking about the office minister or office manager thing because like Lori and her husband be doing a lot up there at that camp.
True. Yeah. So it's also a ministry that, it's funny because a lot of people always say, oh, so summer's over. What are you doing now? We're like, we literally yesterday sent home a group of 180 people. It was a Catholic student retreat that they came out. We served them all weekend. We've got another group coming in this weekend that, our other staff members, Charlie and Melissa, help out a lot with. But yeah, we all wear all the hats. We do it all because there's only 4 of us on staff and we run the whole place. So yeah, it's a lot, but it's, I always tell people when we're tired, it's a holy tired. And yeah. I love that because it really is just being able to serve God every day of every week. We often joke about people are like, John, you need to rest. And he's like, no, because camp is my hobby, you know? So he is resting, being able to do that ministry. So, yeah.
Funny sidebar, maybe not funny, but sidebar on that for sure. I think I've talked about it on the podcast before, but rest is not always taking a nap. Rest is not always, doing a relaxing activity like getting a massage or, watching TV or whatever. Rest sometimes means that you have to exercise that creative part of your brain or whatever part of your brain that you maybe like naturally lean towards because it's relaxing. So anyway, I like to tell people that anytime I can get the chance because I spent so much of my life like wondering why watching
almost
and binging guilty. Netflix wasn't making me feel any more rested.
Yeah.
And it did make me feel guilty because anytime I had the time to rest, quote unquote, we'll put that in air quotes, I was, I didn't necessarily always want to just sit around and scroll endlessly on my phone. I wanted to do other things, but if I didn't prioritize it, I always found myself, when I finally did do it, feeling some like big relief, like I had been waiting to do it. It's just the weirdest thing. Anyway, well, enough about that. I want to jump in with Lori on her story because we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of kick off by talking about my family. Ashton and I had a chance to sit down a few weeks ago and just kind of talk through the outline. And this was one of the things that she said she really wanted me to point out, because it's foundational for the whole rest of everything that I talk about. Both sides of my family, my mom's side and my dad's side, are all Christians. I grew up very heavily influenced in the Christian lifestyle. My dad's a preacher. My mom also works in the church. She's quote, quote, only the secretary. I come by this honestly, I promise. And so, yeah, my dad's family, my grandma and grandpa served in the church. My grandpa was an elder. Grandma was a Sunday school teacher until the day she died. Like, she was all in. My mom's side of the family, my grandpa was an elder. My grandma was a Sunday school teacher. And so, yeah, we just grew up around this, just being a Christian family. It's very odd to me when I think about the fact that I grew up not really knowing non-Christians. That was my life. I was surrounded all the time by church people. So maybe a little bit weird there, because like I didn't have any of that influence until I was in school. We were public schooled. So, you know, I did get to have that type of influence and atmosphere growing up. Okay, so I'm going to back up again, back to my great grandma. We called her Nanny. And I remember growing up, spending summers at my grandma's house. We were kind of talking about this with my teenage son, who loves to spend summers at his grandma's house now. But I would go to bed at night, and my nanny, she probably wasn't all that old, but she seemed like ancient to me, you know. It just, that's how old people work. But she had a bad back, and my grandma would go in and rub the whatever muscle stuff on her back, and it would smell up the whole house. So like I associate the smell of Bengay, peppermint, you know, with this. But my nanny would lay in there in her bed and would talk to herself for hours. And I always thought it was kind of creepy. Like, what is she doing? You know, didn't know until I was older. She was in there praying like for hours. Everybody on the prayer list, lights off, laying in her bed, just talking to God like it was just a conversation. And you know, I thought she was the crazy old lady across the hall, you know, talking to herself. But now that I am older and I recognize how strong her prayer faith was, that she just poured it out every single night. So that's my dad's grandma. And my dad growing up was kind of just the normal teenage kid. Got to high school, and my grandpa told him that he was going to go to Bible college. And my dad's like, what? You know, and he's like, no, you're going to go at least do a year of Bible college. My aunt, his older sister, had gone to Bible college as well. And so he had to go to Ozark Christian College for at least a year. And he ended up staying, becoming a minister, started out as a youth minister, and then moved on to senior ministry. And he actually knew my mom before he went to Bible college. They grew up in the same church together. Both my grandparents served as elders together, all the good stuff. And so my mom followed him to Bible college, and she actually sewed her wedding dress her freshman year in her dorm room. And so they were married, and she ended up getting just her associate's degree, but then working at the school in the ministry, in the music department. And my dad got his preaching degree and started preaching like straight out of college. So then I came along, and we moved from Joplin to Arkansas, and he started a youth ministry there at the church that he grew up at. He and my mom both grew up at. And so we started out in youth ministry, and then things kind of, you know, went a little sideways, which we'll talk about on another episode, you know, how things in ministry are not always easy.
Yeah.
But he got called to a little bitty town in southwest Oklahoma that at that point was close to 6 hours away from family because slower speed limits and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So packed us up and we moved, and he got there. And this is my version of the story, Dad. If it's wrong, I'm so sorry. So we got there and basically moved in, and then found out that the senior minister was not going to be there for very much longer. And by the way, we hired you as the preaching minister, not the youth minister.
Oh.
So he kind of just inherited that role. And of course, at that point then was doing dual duties. Again, I come by it all honestly. So we grew up in this really little town. I started kindergarten there, graduated from there, all my siblings as well. And so it was just, it's wild to think how God just picked us up and put us in this little bitty podunk town. And my dad has been serving faithfully there for almost 45 years at this point.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just longevity is in my blood.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, I really admire the way that they have had that stick-to-itiveness, that a lot of ministry families don't have. They've lived in the same house since like 1986. And so, you know, as a ministry family, that's a very unique story as well. So anyway, I grew up being told that I was going to go to Bible college too. So put a pin in that one and we'll come back to it. But yeah, I grew up in the church. Pretty much anytime the doors were open, we were in the church. Your kids were running around.
Yep. I was going to say, that sounds familiar.
Ministry life. One of my favorite church stories, we call church mice, is what we call ourselves. But my brother got left behind one night. You know, we cleaned up everything and we left. Our parsonage is like literally just across the field from the church. So, you know, I mean, and we realized that my little brother is not with us. Don't know where he is. So mom and dad go back to look for him and find him in the bathroom at the church, just swinging his feet and just singing, you know, to himself. And I mean, it did not bother us to be alone in the church and to be, you know, it was like second home. Anytime the doors, well, even when the doors weren't open.
Right.
Yeah, we used to get to paint the baptistry. You know, I mean, the things that you probably don't realize that preachers' kids do, you know, learned how to fill the communion cups and all the things. I could army crawl under the pews faster than...
That sounds like a fun game.
Yeah, just stuff. So also we went to church camp, which is probably half the reason why I have the ministry that I have now. My first time at church camp, I was actually in utero. So, yeah. And then just started like of course, with my dad being a youth minister, we would go to camp every summer. That's just what we did. I started being a junior counselor like in 6th grade, which was actually too young to be a junior counselor, but because I had grown up at camp, there were small exceptions being made and everything. But yeah, I lived every summer at church camp and absolutely loved it. It was just highlight of my year every year. Some of my best friends still to this day were people that I met at church camp. When I was in middle school, we hired our youth minister, first time youth minister since my dad, you know, like, hey, let's get somebody in here. We actually had a pretty good thriving youth group at that time. And so Jeff came on as our youth minister and really just kind of blew it out of the water. Gave me somebody else to look to as a pillar besides my parents. First time I feel that somebody else was making that type of impact on my life. Yeah. So shout out to all the youth ministers and children's ministers out there that are making that difference. Heard a statistic the other day that when kids go to Bible college and they're asked who was your main influencer to make this decision, it's the youth minister. Wow. Not saying that their parents didn't have any influence in that, but they recognize the youth minister as that. So if you've got younger kids in your life or even middle school, high school, and you recognize any type of potential in them, speak into that because they don't hear it from their parents. I mean, their parents might say it. They don't hear it.
No.
It's a totally different sound that hits their brain when you say, do you recognize that you're valuable? Because their parents can say that to them all day long and they will not hear it.
Preach it. I mean, really. And it's not even just that like nice stuff. I mean, my son is 6 years old and I can't tell you how many times he came home saying, you know, mama said, that's their grandma. Mama said, I shouldn't lie because X, Y, Z. And I was like, I've only told you that 17 times
yesterday,
literally. But it's, so yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean, there are things about you that will stick in your kid's brain, but when it comes to, their faith, when it comes to like the other pieces, right? You can't make a whole person just by yourself. And the same way, their personality isn't shaped just by you by yourself either. So as they grow into that, like, I think it is important to have other voices, other perspectives, and other trusted adults.
That saying of it takes a village really is true. And so encouragement for you moms, don't feel bad when you let other people speak into your kids. And, when you take that date night with your husband and you let somebody watch your kids, because it really is growth for them.
Yes.
And being influenced by, so I guess I need to say, be careful who you let influence your
Absolutely.
kids. Because they do hear and they do take it in. So yeah.
And it's not even just on that point, it's not even just the who. Because if you think about what kids watch and where they take it in, like the movies, the TV shows, the YouTube videos that they're watching also inform in the same way. So you're right. It's really important to be careful, but I will tell you, one of the best pieces of advice that I'd ever received was it takes a village and you should actually use the village. Because I know several moms in my life that they never get a break from their children. And I hate saying it like get a break, but they don't ever their kids don't feel comfortable with anybody else feeding into them in their lives. And so I think church is a really safe, great place to start trying that if you are in that situation.
Yeah. And the amount of kids that we have come through church camp that their parents will drop them off and say, I really hope this goes okay, because my kid has never spent a night away from home. They've never spent a night away from us. And we'll often ask, not even with a grandparent, Like
wow.
It's unreal how many kids have never had that type of experience. And not that it's, necessary,
right?
But it always is just very staggering, the amount of kids that come to camp that don't have that village.
Right.
And so, find those people and,
right.
Build relationships. And even if it's not a staying overnight, because I get that in
Absolutely.
This day and age.
Me too.
Like we don't let our kids stay at people's houses unless we know them really well.
Absolutely.
And even then it's like,
right.
You're nervous the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Bennett, my son, had his very first overnight, like 2 weeks ago with someone that was not family. And it is somebody that I trust very, very much, would trust them with my children any day, any time. But I've thought about this before too. Like, what am I going to do when he gets a little bit older and wants to stay at his friend's house that I've never met their parents once? Mm-hmm. I don't know. But that's a future Ashton problem
at this tomorrow.
Right. So Lori grew up a preacher's kid. Mm-hmm. And I think, not all of us have that same maybe rooted upbringing. And I think I think both sides have their pros and cons, right? So don't be beating yourself up if you're not a preacher's family, because I don't think that that's the point here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say, preachers are humans like everybody else. Did my dad have a temper? Absolutely. Did I get his temper? Absolutely. And nobody is perfect except for Jesus. And, like a lot of times ministers get put on that pedestal.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not where they're supposed to be. You love them, you treat them. Preachers' kids are kids.
Yep.
Like, they're going to make the mistakes. They're going to still spill the Kool-Aid on the carpet. They're probably going to say a bad word at some point,
yeah.
But to be held to that higher standard just because you're the preacher's kid is unfair. Mm-hmm. So, please give your preachers, give your youth ministers, give your children's ministers some grace.
Absolutely.
Because they're doing their best. They're humans too, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's exhausting, honestly. And to be looked at all the time in that little fishbowl is not pleasant. Every little mistake you make back in our day, because cell phones weren't a thing,
Right.
We would joke about the phone call would beat you home. Like if you did anything wrong in town, everybody knew you were the preacher's kid and they would call your parents, or the gossip mill would start, and it was like, you just had to be walking on eggshells your whole life. And
Wow.
it's not fair. So please don't do that to your ministers' families, because their job is hard enough as it is.
Right.
I am a firstborn, and Ashton and I have a lot in common. The whole ADD, like all the perfectionism, the lists, when we were talking and I was like, okay, so just so you know, these are all the things about me. And like, again, small town, small school, I graduated with 25 people. But I did all the things. I mean, like if it was available, I did it. Mostly to stay out of my house, which, here I am telling you, be gracious to your ministers. And I was not very gracious to my own. But yeah, I was very much a rebellious teen that really struggled with my own faith. Even though it had been modeled for me by my literally entire family, I still went off the deep end for a little while and had my own faith struggle. And just because you grow up in a good household does not mean you're going to be a good person. I'm not saying I'm a bad person. Oh, that came out really bad.
No. But what they can hear, what the audience, what you're listening, what you can hear from that is you can pour into your children. Your parents can pour into your children. Your church can pour into your children. At the end of the day, God has made them the way he made them, and their story is unique in their own way. So you may do everything right, and they still may turn away for a season, for a time.
But I really do believe the verse in Proverbs, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
Absolutely.
You have those seeds. And it's never too late to plant a seed.
Exactly.
You can be 60 years old and find out about Jesus for the very first time, and it can make a world of difference, not just in your life, but in everybody around you, the older, the younger, everybody.
Absolutely. So what I want you to hear, no shame if your child is in a place where they're questioning their faith. If you've planted the right seeds, you pray that they grow, So anyway.
Yeah. So let me go to where I went to left field, because it's a doozy of a story, people. So when I was 12 years old, my 10-year-old brother, well, I guess I should tell you, I'm one of four. There's me. And then 2 years later came along my brother, Troy. 3 years after that, my sister, Erin. And then 3 years after that was my brother, Alan. So there's actually 8.5 years between my brother, Alan, and me. Aaron wasn't even out of elementary school when I graduated high school. So pretty big gap there. But so when I was 12, my 10-year-old brother, Troy, was diagnosed with leukemia. And if you took somebody that you would say the Holy Spirit just emanated from in anything and everything he said and did, that would have been my brother. Maybe not when he was younger, but like he took this diagnosis as, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure everybody that comes into my path knows about Jesus. He was schooling youth ministers. Like we kind of joke about the whole idea that he was 12 when he passed away, but like that whole idea of Jesus being in the temple, and people coming and being like, who is this that's teaching? That was my brother. Like he would go out to ministers' lunches with my dad and like be on the same level with them. I don't even know where it all came from, but he used his illness as a witness. In the hospital, everywhere he went, it's like he just emanated Jesus. Everything he said, everything he did. And of course, that made it hard for little old rebellious me with the anger issues and all the things going on, because I had this literally perfect brother. I told Ashton, I got to put a disclaimer on this because He died in 1992, which is a really long time ago at this point. All of this is my memory and my perspective of everything that happened. It's probably just a little bit fuzzy and grainy. So the things that I'm sharing are things from my perspective. The way that I remember them may not be entirely accurate.
Yeah.
But it's the way that my remembering of everything happened. And so probably he wasn't all that perfect, but that's the way that my mind has him painted. Because in my mind, he was. He was the one getting up on Sundays singing specials with his little bald head, and just amazing witness that he had, changed people's lives, honestly. And so obviously I kind of spoiler alert there, that he did pass away when he was 12. I was 14. I remember in my 6th grade science class, which was the year that he was diagnosed, my parents having to come in and basically tell my class, this is not contagious. Like, please don't treat Lori any differently just because her brother has cancer.
Wow.
And one of those things of that realization in my mind that people might treat me differently, because of this, when to me, he's just my brother, and everybody's known him. We've grown up in this town our whole lives. But that moment of, oh, things are different, Yeah. And so the next 2 years from 1990 to 1992 were pretty wild in our family. The children's hospital was about an hour away, and my parents spent a lot of time with him up there, getting treatments, doing all the things that needed to be done to try to prolong his life, hopefully save him, like that was our ultimate goal, was that he would be healed.
Right.
And I even remember the elders in our church coming over and anointing him with oil and praying over him. And just like the book of James says to do. And, in my mind, quote, quote, it didn't work. Mm-hmm. And so now with the perspective that I have now as an adult, I recognize things a little bit differently. As a 13-year-old witnessing that happen, and then knowing a year later that he's terminal and nothing we can do is going to stop this train, I had lots of problems with that. Yeah. I was very, very mad at God. The whole idea that he would take a child that was serving him so diligently, giving everything that he had for God, showing love to everybody regardless. I mean, I struggled with that. So we finally got to the point right before he passed away that things were not looking good. And we knew that. And so we were actually granted a Make-A-Wish trip to go to Colorado, go on a skiing trip, because he had actually gotten to go with the Children's Hospital to go skiing a couple times, and none of the rest of us got to go. And so, except for my mother. So, we all went to Colorado, and we got there, and he was already so sick that he didn't ever even leave our condo. Mm-hmm. He just curled up in a bed, lots of pain, slept pretty much the whole time. I mentioned a couple different times my anger issues, and I'm not even joking about that. It was pretty bad. I was not the best kid in the world. I'm sure I drove my parents crazy. But I remember walking into his room and basically being like, Troy, you are the most selfish person in this whole entire world. Here we are on a Make-A-Wish trip, and Mom is in the back room crying because you won't get out of bed. Dude, like, seriously, what kind of child does that? This one. And next thing I know, he is struggling down the hallway back to their room to comfort my mom while she was crying. Oh. And at that point, my parents were like, you know what? We really need to head back home. This is not good. He doesn't have much longer. So we fly back to Oklahoma City. We went straight from the airport to the hospital. My younger 2 siblings went to my aunt and uncle's house because they lived there in the city. I got to go to the hospital with my parents. I'm still not sure why, besides the fact that basically he was my best friend. But so we got to the hospital. I remember the night. It was raining. The curtain was drawn. I was kind of in a little alcove in the room. And I woke up to my mom and dad crying. I could hear my mom, and I kind of peeked around the curtain, and you could just tell it was the end. And so I kind of stood at the foot of the bed, not knowing if I was welcome or not. I felt like I was invading the private space. But my parents said that it was okay, and my mom was just talking to him, telling him that it was all right, that she knew he was in pain. He hadn't woken up the whole time since we had been back to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And just telling him it was all right. And my dad was like, it's all right. Again, my perspective of all of this, because this is how I remember it. I remember standing at the foot of his bed and saying, I'm not going to say this. And my dad's looking at me. I'm like, I'm not going to tell him that it's okay for him to go, and my mom and dad just kept saying, it's okay. It's okay. And finally I was like, Troy, it's okay if you go. And my memory of that night is that was when he took his last breath. And feeling like he knew that I needed to know that it was okay. And it hasn't ever been okay, but knowing the faith that he had, I know where he is.
Yeah.
And I don't know how my life would be different if that hadn't happened. I like to think of him as being married with kids and living a wonderful life where he was probably a youth minister or a preacher or both, mission field. I don't know. I picture that from him. But I do know that all of that set my life on a course, a trajectory that put me where I am, because I don't know that a lot of the things that happened in my life would have happened had it not been for that anchoring moment right then. So yeah, losing your best friend at 14, who's also your sibling. And then, like I said, my sister was like 5.5 years younger. And so there was just that disconnect, between me and Aaron and Alan. We're all good friends now, but growing up was really, really hard. They had to share a room because they were little, and I got the room all to myself. My sister and I had always shared a room, and when Troy passed away, I got the bedroom, and they had to share a room, which I still don't think they're very happy about. But it was a big bedroom. They were able to put bookshelves down the middle and everything, and they each kind of had their own half of the room. But like I said, when I moved out, my sister was only still in elementary school, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But then my grandma moved in, so maybe it was. But so yeah, like I said, I had a faith struggle with that. On the outside, everything was great. I was going to church camp. I was the preacher's kid that was always at church. I always had a smile, in public. At home, I was a horrible kid. Mom, Dad, I am sorry. I recognize I was not a good kid. I was not fun to be around. I slammed doors. I yelled. I did everything that I could to let the feelings that I was having on the inside just emote themselves at home. Which, a lot of people always say, kids are going to do that in their safe space.
Yeah, they will.
So.
And that's trauma too. Like people who go through what you went through, especially at the age you went through, you don't know how to process all of that at that age. And so the only way to let it out is to let it out, and do it in your safe space, which would be with your family. Mm-hmm. So and also, let's not forget, you were living in the home that your brother also lived in. Mm-hmm. You were literally walking around in this.
Oh, sleeping in his bedroom.
Exactly. This entire place. It's just a reminder of this friend, this brother that you lost. Mm-hmm. So, I think it would have been weird if you weren't that kid, right?
Yeah, I threw myself into sports. Like I said, I was doing anything and everything imaginable to keep myself out of the house.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, just because of the way things were for those 2 years, and then also after my siblings, my parents did not get to be very involved with the things that I was doing. I rode the bus a lot to and from games, and other kids would get picked up by their parents at away games, and I would ride the bus home. And, you know, at the time, not a big deal. Again, I was fine being away from home. Like, you know, give me my space, give me my independence, which has always been a struggle for me. I'm a very, very independent person.
Same.
And sometimes a little too much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, it was just, things were hard. Until about high school. I think I was maybe 11th grade, my junior year. Went to CIY, Christ in Youth, and church camp, but it was the CIY that kind of made the difference, that I just felt like there's more. I should be doing more. I'm not honoring my brother and his legacy by being the person that I'm being. Like, if I'm the one who is still here, why am I not being a witness that a 10 and 12-year-old boy was? Like, I mean, seriously, people, get with the game. And so I was very convicted of that, and just kind of made that shift in my mind and my brain. And, you know, the next 2 years were different. So.
Yeah. Well, no. And I wanted to also comment on, what you were struggling with, even if it hadn't been your brother. That's a really big faith concept to try to absorb at 14 years old. The whole idea of, why do bad things happen to good people? Why did God allow that to happen to your brother? Well, like you said, your testimony in its own probably wouldn't look the same. Mm-hmm. And I have every confidence that God would have you'd still have a testimony that is powerful and moving. But maybe that was what Troy's legacy was about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is this moment that you just said, where I'm not honoring my brother's memory with my behavior right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I told you too, like, it gave me a different perspective of, you know, like, when people lose a child, you always focus on the parents, like, and not that the parents don't need it, but I always focus on the siblings. We have a family in our life group that lost a daughter, and I always ask about their kids, because I connect so deeply with them and understand their emotions are so much bigger than you're probably realizing. And we also are stuffers, because we recognize that our parents are hurting. And if we show that, you know, emotion, it can sometimes affect the way that they're having their emotions. You know, like, we don't want to make them feel worse because we feel worse.
Yeah.
So we're very careful about walking on eggshells all the time, you know, and feeling like, if I tell you how I really feel, it's going to make you feel bad. And I don't want to do that, because I can tell you're already feeling bad enough.
Right.
So, you know, I just really relate to that side of it.
Yeah.
And, if you've ever been with anybody who has lost a child, please check on their other children as well. Because they're hurting in a much different way, and a lot of times don't know how to express it.
Mm-hmm.
And especially not express it healthily.
Right.
Because it's hard. We don't process death well, no matter what age we are.
No.
And, you know, my brother was like 5 at the time. You know, and how do you explain that to a 5-year-old? You know, he's not coming back. You know, and your sister's going to move into his bedroom, you know?
Right.
So, like, it's just, it's big emotions, big everything. My brother handled it way differently than the rest of us. He is now a funeral home director.
Wow.
So we joke a lot about the fact that death does not bother us at all in our family anymore, with my dad being a preacher, you know, and my sister actually is an accountant that works with trusts and everything in the funeral business. My brother is a funeral director, and, you know, so we're all the time, like, we tell funny stories around the table, you know, about, like, hey, you know, this and that. And so, yeah, we're kind of an odd bunch, but I am not scared of death, which probably is because of this whole thing.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's weird. When I tell people that, they're like, what do you mean? Like that's really weird that you don't worry about. I'm like, no, I mean, I don't. When you face it that young head on, it loses its power.
I'm getting a lot more comfortable with the idea of death as I get older. And, the idea that none of us are going to make it out alive. Although I still haven't stopped praying that Jesus would just come before that happens.
Absolutely.
But I might go on a rabbit hole here, but I used to get really bothered when people would be like, come Lord Jesus. I'm like, what do you mean? We got a lot going on here. And I'm not sure, cause at the time, like I don't think I fully understood my salvation. I didn't understand what would happen when Jesus came. All I knew is things would look pretty different if I got to see what happened to them. You know what I mean? But I've gotten more comfortable recently with it and in fact have been. Were we talking about this while we were recording or not? I can't even remember now. But where we talk about the idea of like those really hard days, some of those days where it's like I am just struggling to get through the bare minimum of the 9 hours that my children are awake.
When is bedtime?
When is bedtime? Like literally counting down, and then I'm like, you know what? We'll just go to bed like a little early tonight.
And then when they say, "But mommy, the sun's still up," you're like, "Yeah, no, blackout curtains." Like I don't know what you're talking about, kiddo.
Exactly. I have those days, and those are the days where I'm just like, come Lord Jesus, come today. And then I realize I'm like, man, like, is this a day that I'd rather it go out on? Like, no, probably not. But also I think I'm pretty confident that my whole family's going to get to go. Like I'm praying that that's the case.
Yeah.
So it just, I'm less scared of it now, but, yeah, literally check in with Ashton about 1 year ago. Ashton would have said, you're crazy for not being afraid of that. Like,
right. And it probably does have some to do with age, but like, yeah. So Ashton and I, were listening to a Bible study / sermon. I just got back from a convention at my alma mater, Ozark Christian College. It's called Preaching and Teaching Convention. And you can actually find them on YouTube, Ozark Christian College, and occ.edu, all the places. Yeah, but it's an awesome convention, mainly centered on people who are in the trenches, preaching and teaching. Obviously, that's not really John and me, but we are in ministry, and so a lot of things still apply to us. Camp ministry is its own little niche, that like nobody really knows what to do with us. But yeah, so anyway, we were there, and every morning we had a thing called Coffee and Bible Study. And a guy that I actually was at school with was leading those. And so if you have a minute and want to go to YouTube and listen to this one, it was the Wednesday morning session. And his name is Jason Price. And you can hear that, what I'm getting ready to talk about. So the whole conference this year was on the book of James, which everybody loves James. I mean, if you don't love James, you're just, I
loved James as a new believer when I first started reading the Bible because he was not beating around the bush at all.
Absolutely.
Like James cut straight to the core and he did not waste time getting to the point.
Yes, he does not mince words at all. And so I actually asked her to listen to this. And so she did before we started talking about this, because I knew that this was going to be something that I wanted to share with you guys, that this idea that he brought up. But anyway, this is in James 4, the end of the chapter, where he says, "Now listen, you who say today or tomorrow, we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast and brag, and all such boasting is evil. Anyone then who knows the good he ought to do and doesn't do it sins." Now, I just kind of read through that as it's written. I mean, like literally, that's what it says. This dude went on a spiritual bashing.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it was like you felt like you were getting boxed over the head with what he was saying here. And I have studied the book of James, I don't know how many different times, but the way that he said all of this was frustrating that I'd never noticed it before, honestly.
Well, I always read that part and I was just like, okay, James,
Yeah.
like, but that's back when you were alive and like Jesus was just there. Like, you know, like Paul thought that Jesus was coming back like tomorrow or the next day,
Yeah.
you know? So I'm sitting here reading that. I'm like, he doesn't get it today though.
Yeah.
But then when this guy started explaining, I'm like, okay.
He kind of got it,
got
a little bit more than what we realized. So the book of James was written to the Jewish believers who had literally been in Jerusalem since Jesus' death. Like, they were the first believers. Like, the day of Pentecost came, these 3,000 people believed, were baptized, and their numbers grew from then and then. And they all just stayed in Jerusalem.
Oh yeah.
Like, you know, I know this, but did I know that, you know, like,
Right.
he's connecting these dots, and I'm like, oh my goodness. I geek out about when people can like point things out that I had never noticed before in scripture. But so he was saying, when James said this, he was saying this to, in chapter 1, it says, I'm writing this to the believers who are scattered among the nations. Because literally what had happened was the Apostle Stephen was stoned, and in a heartbeat, everybody left Jerusalem because they were scared of that happening to them as well. And so it was kind of like this forced exodus out of Jerusalem to self-preservation, honestly.
Right.
So when he is saying to people, when you're sitting here saying today or tomorrow, we're going to go here and do that or carry on business or make money, he's saying, people, do you not remember what just happened? Like, you literally are not promised tomorrow. Like, if we have learned anything, it is that you don't know. Like, somebody could come in tomorrow and grab you and stone you, literally, to these people. I mean, now granted, that's probably not going to happen to us, but we don't know that. We
literally don't.
We are not guaranteed anything. And so he says, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. And he says, what is your life? It is but a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. And we think of ourselves way bigger than that. We don't like to think of ourselves as being unimportant or momentary, you know.
Main character energy.
Absolutely. You know, like, I mean, we're sitting here doing a podcast. I mean, you know, like, we like to think that we are all that, you know, and to be totally 90s on you guys and a bag of chips. But yeah, like, seriously, we don't know what we've got in store for us. We are literally just a breath at best. And then he points out King David, who's like, God, remind me to count my days. Remind me that I am just a breath. And, you know, I'm driving down here to do this with you and thinking about the fact that I could go around a corner and hit a deer.
Literally.
Like, I mean, when you live out in the boonies of Missouri, it is very likely to happen. I had never hit a deer before. I moved to Missouri, hit 2. Like, I don't know.
It is part of our standard goodbye. Okay, bye. Drive
Watch
safe.
out.
Watch for deer.
Yes, that's how you say you love you. Yeah, like, so yeah, seriously. But then he pointed out that instead you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will. And he goes, break, we will live. Pause. Like, not just we're going to do this or we're going to do that. That if it's God's will, we will be able to carry on. He will bless us with another day. And every day that we have is a blessing. And the fact that I've made it 47 years in life, you know, is a blessing. If nothing else of my story has made any sense, it's that, you know, that like I literally watched my younger brother not have a tomorrow. And I continued to live my life as if I did. And here in James says, that's evil to assume that you have a tomorrow is basically saying, I know more, I know bigger, better, whatever than God, that my plans are bigger than his plans because I'm just assuming that I have all of this time. And so then the next verse talks about anyone then who knows the good he ought to do and doesn't do it sins.
Yeah.
So he's this guy that's preaching this at us, put these two together of if you boast and brag about your tomorrows, it's evil, not just, not a good thing. Literally from the evil one. Satan is the one that's convincing you that you can do it tomorrow, that whatever it is in your life, I can do it next week. I can do it next month. I can do it next year.
Because if he can delay you, you miss your purpose, right?
Absolutely.
Like you miss the thing that God's putting before you in this plan, in this life.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next episode too, about how parenting comes into play there. Missing out. I told Ashton, I struggled with escapism when my kids were little, because literally all I wanted was just a minute to myself, and to be so arrogant that I assumed more time with my children, and to be so arrogant to assume that they had more time with me.
Absolutely.
It's just like James says, it's evil. It's one of Satan's tactics to get us to not pay attention to the here and now and to let everything just be put off. And so to not do the good that is sin. And so basically, to wrap up here, we're going to ask you, what are you putting off? What are you not doing that you should be doing? Who's that person that you need to talk to? Who's the person you need to ask forgiveness from? Who's the person that you need to approach and say, you know what, you have meant so much to me in my life, and I don't know that you know that.
Yep.
And
I mean, I don't remember his name, but he said it best when he said, when you get that terminal diagnosis, if you knew the day that you died, the closer that day came, the less that Alaskan cruise would matter to you that you want to do someday. The less getting out of debt would matter to you that you plan to do someday, because you're going to be thinking about who do you need to make sure they know you love them. Who do you need to forgive? Who do you need to tell about Jesus? And so I can't end on a better note than that. So tune in next week to hear not the rest of the story, but the next part of the story. In the meantime, keep looking for the calm in the chaos and finding the miracles in the mess.
Thank you for listening to Miracles in the Madness. I hope today's episode encouraged you and reminded you that even in the chaos, God is present and faithful. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with a friend who might need a little encouragement today. This helps more listeners like you find this podcast. You can connect with me and find devotionals, resources, and faith-filled tools to support your walk with God at ashtonkeever.com. You can also follow along on social media or join the community where we continue these conversations and walk this journey together. Remember, God is still writing your story. He's working in your everyday moments, and you are never alone in the beautiful chaos of motherhood.